My name is Maya Parker. I'm 29 years old. I'm a biomedical research engineer living in Boston. And I just married the one man I truly believe has ever loved me wholeheartedly, Ethan Miller. But in the moment that was supposed to be the most sacred of my life, as Ethan and I held the knife to cut our wedding cake, I saw something no bride should ever have to face. The entire row reserved for the bride's family, completely empty. No parents. No brother. Not a single relative showed up. Before the shock could even settle, my phone buzzed furiously inside the pocket of my wedding gown. Over 40 missed calls. All from my mom, dad, and younger brother. But what made my blood run cold was a single message from my mother. We need to talk. Do not believe whatever your brother told you. Have you ever had your entire family turn their backs on you on the most important day of your life? Have you ever felt like a lifetime of being overlooked suddenly exploded, right at the moment you thought you had finally made it out? If you've ever been hurt by the people you love most, leave a comment below. Hit like so I have the strength to keep telling this story. And subscribe if you want to hear the full journey I took to stand tall after it all. Because you'll never guess what really happened after that message. I was born and raised in the town of Midland in northern Michigan. A place where winters are long and sharp winds cut through the streets, but the houses are always lit with warm light and the sound of laughter. From the outside, my family looked like your average American household. A 2-story home with a white picket fence, a flag hanging on the porch every holiday, and family photos lined up along the staircase. But inside, there were things no photo or laughter could ever reveal. I was the oldest child, 3 years older than my brother Ryan. I was quiet, bookish, always more interested in reading than in playing with dolls. I still remember the excitement I felt when I got a perfect score on a second-grade math test. I ran home, my heart pounding, gripping the paper with the bright red A+. My mom was in the kitchen and my dad was outside adjusting the antenna. I held up the paper, beaming. "I got 100, Mom." She glanced up briefly and said, "That's great, honey. I'll put it on the fridge later." But the fridge was already covered, with photos of Ryan in his Little League uniform, Ryan with his school track medal, Ryan on Dad's shoulders at the school sports day. Ryan was the center of every dinner conversation, every anecdote, every word of praise. Every time he scored in a school basketball game, the house erupted like he had just signed an NBA contract. Mom would make grilled cheeseburgers, Dad fired up the backyard barbecue, and Grandma called from Florida to congratulate him. Me. I scored perfectly in the statewide biology exam. I quietly placed the certificate on the kitchen counter. That evening, when Dad asked, "Anything fun at school today?" I just smiled and said, "Nothing special." I used to believe that if I worked hard enough, my parents would notice me the way they noticed Ryan. I joined the science club, earned scholarships to college summer programs, won local essay contests. But whenever I shared the news, Mom was usually too busy ironing Ryan's uniform. Dad was always focused on Ryan's practice schedule. I learned to keep it short. I was selected for the honors team at school. "Oh, that's great, sweetheart. But can you help me find Ryan's shoe? He lost it again." I didn't hate Ryan. In fact, I adored him. He was easygoing, cheerful, someone people naturally liked. But as we got older, I started to feel like I was someone standing outside a window watching the life inside. I was there, but no one truly saw me. There's one memory I've never forgotten. I was 14, Ryan was 11. I had spent the entire month preparing for a neuroscience presentation at a university-sponsored summer camp. The night I came home with a certificate and a special invitation to return the following year, I walked into the living room, and it was packed with people. Ryan had won a silver medal in the state youth basketball tournament. Dad was popping champagne. Mom was hugging Ryan like he'd just been named a child prodigy. I stood at the doorway, my certificate in hand, and no one saw me. I quietly returned to my room. That whole night, no one asked where I'd been, what I'd done, or why I skipped the cake. Maybe you're wondering, why didn't she speak up? Why didn't she demand fairness? I did. More than once. But every time I was met with the same look of disbelief and disappointment from my mom. "Maya, why are you being so selfish? Your brother is still young. He needs encouragement." Dad was more blunt. "You're the older one. Be more mature." I eventually learned something crucial. No one wanted to hear my pain. They just wanted me to be successful, obedient, and quiet. The child who didn't make waves. A shadow easy to manage. When I was 17, I got accepted into a summer research program at Michigan State. I filled out the application myself, gathered my documents, wrote my own recommendation letters. When I told my parents, Mom asked, "What about Ryan? Who will he play with this summer?" Then she sighed, "I think you should stay home. Family is what matters most." I didn't argue. I closed the door, turned on music, and signed the confirmation form. For the first time, I chose what I wanted, regardless of their indifference. When I left for college, no one saw me off except the long-distance bus. My parents didn't take the day off. Ryan was at basketball camp. I dragged my suitcase onto the bus and, looking back through the window, watched our house grow smaller behind me. I felt hollow, but strangely free. I didn't leave Midland out of spite. I left because I realized that to be seen and loved, I would have to find another place. Another home. I came back over the years. Thanksgiving. Christmas. My grandfather's funeral. I was still the afterthought in every family conversation. Ryan's teaching at the high school now, Mom would proudly tell everyone. He has his own apartment, his own car, doing great. No one asked what I was working on in the lab or how many research papers I had published. I learned to play the role of the polite, distant relative. I'd help with dinner, wash dishes, smile, nod, then drive back to Boston early the next morning. When Ethan came into my life, I kept everything hidden. It took nearly a year before I told him about my family. About growing up in silence. About feeling invisible in my own home. Ethan didn't say much. He just held my hand, looked me straight in the eyes, and said something I'll never forget. "You weren't wrong. You were just the only one who knew something wasn't right." I thought maybe this time, when I told them about the wedding, my parents would be different. That they'd finally look at me with pride. That they'd put me first. But standing there at my own wedding, staring at empty chairs, I realized I was wrong. And then that message from Mom lit up the screen. "We need to talk. Do not believe whatever your brother told you." In that moment I knew this wasn't over. And maybe I wouldn't stay silent. I still remember standing alone in that packed auditorium. The spotlight shone on the stage. Hundreds of graduates cheered, throwing caps into the air as applause thundered from the crowd. I wore a deep navy gown, name badge pinned to my chest, holding the certificate for graduating with honors in biomedical science. Still ringing in my ears was the final announcement. "We proudly present Maya Parker, valedictorian, recipient of a full doctoral scholarship." I bowed slightly, smiled, but my eyes scanned the rows of audience seats. I had reserved 3 seats in the 4th row. One for Mom. One for Dad. And one for Ryan, if he had decided to come. Those seats remained empty from start to finish. Not a single member of my family showed up. The night before, I had called Mom one last time, even though deep down I didn't really believe they'd be there. She picked up after the 5th ring, her voice rushed like she was driving and searching for something. "Oh, hi, honey, what's going on?" "Mom, do you remember tomorrow is my honors graduation ceremony? I sent you emails, texts, and invitation. I even called last week." "Yes, I remember. But tomorrow your father and I have to take Ryan to Indianapolis. He has a college recruitment meeting with the head coach from Iowa. It's a big opportunity." "I'm receiving an honors degree, Mom," I said slowly. "I'm the only student in my program this year to get a full-ride scholarship. You've done great, I'm so proud of you. But Ryan only gets this one chance, you understand, right? You'll have more chances to be recognized later." I hung up before I could cry. It wasn't about the ceremony, it was the way she said later, as if everything I achieved could be postponed, rescheduled, or fit around Ryan's calendar. Yet for my brother, even a friendly match would have the whole family driving through 3 states just to cheer him from the sidelines. Something inside me quietly broke. When I stepped off the stage, the first person to hug me was my advisor. He smiled, eyes gleaming. "Your parents must be so proud." I smiled instead of answering. After the ceremony, some of my classmates gathered to take pictures with their families. I stood to the side, diploma in hand, pretending to text so no one would notice I was alone. That night, I sat in my small rental apartment near campus and replayed the graduation video recorded by the university. When my name was announced, I paused the video, staring at my own face on screen. A moment I had worked so many years to reach. A moment that someone from my family should have witnessed. But they weren't there. Their absence no longer made me angry. It exhausted me. as if I had run a marathon only to realize I was alone at the finish line. I didn't blame Ryan. Growing up, he had always lived with the spotlight. He never had to fight for attention, it was always his. I don't believe he ever meant to overshadow me. He just never had to notice those living in the shadows. What hurt most was that my parents didn't even realize the damage. They'd call on big holidays, say things like, "We're proud of you," but never asked what I was doing, where I lived, if I was tired, if I needed anything. Questions that seemed simple, but to me they were a luxury. I remember once, when my first research paper got published in a science journal, I called Mom, my heart racing with excitement. She picked up after several rings. "I'm in the car with Ryan. He's got a big game today. Can you make it quick?" My first paper got published, Mom. In the Journal of Biomedical Research. They selected mine out of more than 400 submissions. "Oh, that's great. You've always been smart. But I'm driving, I'll call you back." He never did. Over time I stopped sharing. Big wins, little joys, promotions, new apartments. Even when I was hospitalized from exhaustion after a tough research cycle, I didn't tell my family. Not because I was angry, but because I no longer expected them to care. In the following years, I had fewer and fewer conversations with my parents. Mostly texts on Thanksgiving or Christmas, a couple of short calls on Mother's Day. And every call revolved around Ryan. He got a new car. He's getting married. He's about to start teaching at a high school nearby. My mom never once asked if I was happy. Gradually, I became a name in the caption of the family photo. Still there, but fading over time. When I met Ethan, I carried all that brokenness with me. He was the first person who truly saw me. Not the accomplished Maya. Not the quiet Maya. Not Ryan's big sister. Just Maya, with all the hurt, fear, and longing to be loved simply and fully. He never tried to fix me. He listened. When I talked about my family, he didn't tell me to just let it go. He simply said, "They don't know how deeply they've hurt you. But I see it. And I'm here." I had hoped my wedding might be a turning point. A chance to reconnect. To have my parents finally see me, really see me, even just once. But standing at the altar that day, the bride's side of the aisle empty, I wondered, was I wrong to keep hoping? And then my phone buzzed, snapping me out of that swirl of memory. "We need to talk. Don't believe what your brother said." I stood still, eyes locked on the screen. The message was brief, hurried, but something in its tone gripped me. Could it be that behind their absence there was a different truth? I moved to Boston after receiving an offer to conduct research at a biomedical center affiliated with Northeastern University. The city felt like a new beginning, full of opportunity yet unfamiliar and cold. I rented a small apartment near Beacon Street, with enough light to read and enough quiet to work late into the night. Most days I buried myself in the lab, wearing noise-canceling headphones, scribbling hours of notes on molecular reactions. Science gave me comfort. There were processes, data, logic, and no one judged you for your feelings. One early fall evening, as the leaves turned red and gold, I was invited to a colleague's birthday party. I almost declined. Social gatherings drained me. But that day I felt the urge to step out of my shell. And that's when I met Ethan Miller. He arrived late. In a room full of technical conversations, Ethan stood out for his calmness and ease. A software engineer at a medical device company, he was introduced to me with a warm handshake and said, "I heard you developed the thermal wave protein separation model. I read your report." I blinked. Not many people remembered that paper outside academic circles. I laughed softly. Didn't think anyone outside the field would be interested in those dry technical pages. "Not dry at all," he said. "I think it could revolutionize how we handle tissue cells." I was curious about the person behind the idea. We talked for nearly an hour in the side kitchen where they kept the cake and coffee. No small talk. Just two strangers speaking like old friends. When the party ended, Ethan asked if I wanted to take a walk around the park. I said yes. Under Boston's soft amber streetlights, I told him about my work. The long experiments. The belief in science, in outcomes that come even if they're slow. Ethan didn't interrupt. When I paused, he simply asked, "Outside the lab, what do you believe in?" Took me a moment to reply. "I believe in standing strong on my own." We started dating not long after. Ethan wasn't flashy or impulsive. He was steady, thoughtful, never invasive. He listened more to my silences than my stories. He never pressed about my family, only occasionally saying, "I can tell you pull back the moment your feelings show." One night, I woke up crying after a nightmare about my empty graduation. Ethan sat beside me, his hand firm on my shoulder. He didn't ask what was wrong, didn't demand an explanation. He just said, "I think you've carried that loneliness far too long by yourself." A few days later, he slid a small business card toward me. The name of a therapist. "If you want to try, not because you're weak, but because you've been strong for too long." I kept the card in my wallet for 3 weeks before calling. The first session was mostly silence. But I went back. Then again. Slowly I began to speak. About childhood, about Ryan, about feeling invisible, about all the expectations my parents never voiced but always imposed. My therapist, a woman in her 50s named Lorraine, didn't give advice like I expected. She asked questions that forced me to finally face myself. "Maya, you've always pushed yourself to excel, in school, at work. But have you ever stopped to ask, whose approval are you chasing?" I stayed quiet for a long time before whispering, "I don't know." Because deep down you've stopped believing that approval will ever come. But that doesn't mean you've given up hope. He was right. Somewhere inside me, there was still a small part that believed, maybe one day my parents would call just to say they missed me. That they wanted to know how I was really doing. That small hope kept me sending Christmas cards. Kept me calling on my mother's birthday. Kept me fulfilling the duties of a daughter, even when each conversation left me feeling hollow. When Ethan proposed, it wasn't the surprise that left me speechless. It was the way he did it. There were no flowers, no romantic candlelit dinner. It was just a quiet weekend morning. He brought coffee to the bed, sat down beside me and said, "I don't want a glamorous life. I just want to wake up every morning and see you there. Will you be my wife?" I nodded through tears. That same day, I sat down and wrote a handwritten letter to my parents. No texts. No calls. I wrote, "I'm getting married to Ethan on June 18th. I hope our family can be there. No gifts, no contributions needed. I just want you to come, if it means anything to you." I stamped it, mailed it, then sat by the window in my office for a long while. Boston outside was loud and busy as always. But inside me there was a strange kind of calm. I didn't know if they would come. I wasn't sure it even mattered the way it used to. But I still hoped. Maybe for the last time. But hope nonetheless. I wasn't dreaming of a grand, glittering wedding. I didn't want a 3-day celebration with live bands and fireworks like the viral videos online. I just wanted something simple, warm, and meaningful. A day where Ethan and I could stand before the people who truly loved us and make our promises. We chose a small old wooden chapel deep in the Vermont woods, about a 4-hour drive from Boston. I'd visited it during a fall trip, and when I stood beneath the canopy of bright yellow maple leaves, I thought, if I ever get married, this is where I want to say my vows. Ethan agreed without hesitation. He said, "As long as you feel peace, I'll be standing there with you." When the wedding invitations were printed, I set aside a Sunday afternoon to call my mother. I still held on to a shred of hope, some small belief that maybe this time would be different. I dialed the landline of the house I grew up in, the one where my father still read his newspaper and my mother arranged flowers in the kitchen. She answered on the third ring. Her voice hadn't changed, still brisk, still rushed, like there was always something more urgent waiting. "Hello, this is your mom." "Hi Mom, it's Maya." "Oh, hello dear. It's been a while. I'm getting married, Mom. This June." "Oh," she hesitated for a moment. "Really? Congratulations. I just heard Ryan signed a full-time coaching contract at Hamilton High. That's been his dream since college. Do you remember?" I gripped the phone tightly. "Mom, did you hear what I said? I'm getting married." "Yes, I heard. Where's the ceremony going to be?" "Vermont. Glen Hollow Chapel. Not too far, about a 4-hour drive. We picked June 18th. Oh, let me think. That might overlap with a friendly tournament Ryan's organizing for his team. He said he'll need us to help with logistics. But I'll check the calendar and let you know, okay?" I forced a smile, keeping my voice soft. "I already sent the invitation in the mail. Please check for it. I really hope you and Dad can come." "Sure, sweetheart. I'll talk to your father and get back to you." The call ended after just a few minutes. No questions about the dress. No one asked what Ethan was like. No real congratulations were offered. I hung up and sat quietly by the window. That evening it rained lightly in Boston. The wet pavement shimmered beneath the streetlights. I sat still, hands wrapped around a lukewarm cup of tea, feeling as if I'd just lost something I'd naively been holding on to. A week later, I received a short text from my mom. "Thanks for the invite. We'll try to make it. Wishing you both happiness." The phrase, "we'll try to make it," echoed in my mind for days. It wasn't a promise. It was a polite way of stepping back without having to say no. I printed 3 more invitations. One each for my parents, for Ryan, and for Aunt Clara, my mother's older sister, someone I'd once been close with as a child but hadn't spoken to in years. I also called Ryan after hesitating several times. He answered while at the field, the background full of shouting and whistles. "I'm really busy right now." "What's up?" "I just wanted to let you know. I'm getting married. I sent you an invite." "Oh yeah, Mom mentioned it. Congrats, sis. I hope you can come. I'll check the schedule. The team's in the middle of the season. I can't make any promises." That sentence stung like a reminder. Same old family priorities. Ryan's career, Ryan's life. Everything else just scenery. When I told Ethan, he didn't get angry for me. He simply sat beside me, held my hand, and said, "I know what you were hoping for. But Maya, if they can't see that you deserve unconditional love, that's not your fault." I leaned into his shoulder, swallowing the lump in my throat. Ethan didn't offer empty comfort. He didn't promise everything would be okay. But his presence, his silent understanding, was enough to make me feel like I wasn't just a child still begging to be seen. We moved ahead with the wedding plans. Flowers, catering, photography. I invited a few trusted coworkers, some close friends, and Ethan's family. People who, though newer in my life, had always treated me with a warmth I hadn't known before. Ethan's mother, Linda, called me every weekend to check on everything from tablecloths to dessert menus. She sent me pictures of wedding dresses she liked, and whenever I hesitated, she would smile and say, "As long as you feel beautiful, Maya, this day is yours." On one visit to Ethan's family in Connecticut, his father took me to the backyard garden where he grew tomatoes and lavender. He handed me a cup of tea and said, "Linda says I'll be in a tuxedo, but I won't complain if it means walking my daughter-in-law down the aisle." I laughed, then fell silent. He looked at me, gentle, not pushing, not expecting. "If your parents can't come, just know, you've got us. Not everyone is born into a family that knows how to love. But everyone deserves to have one." I bowed my head. I felt like I'd stepped into a place where I truly belonged. A family that didn't ask how impressive I was, that didn't compare me to anyone else. They just loved me. For being me. And I thought maybe that would be enough. But I didn't know yet that the days ahead would unravel a series of events none of us could have predicted. 2 weeks before the wedding, Ethan and I were arranging the seating chart when my phone buzzed. It was Aunt Clara. I was a little surprised. She rarely called on her own, but in my childhood memories she was the only relative who used to sit beside me at family dinners, quietly slipping me an extra piece of chicken when I was left out at the long table full of people. I answered, and her voice was as warm as ever. "Maya, I got your wedding invitation. Congratulations, beautiful bride." "Thank you, Auntie. I'm so glad you can come." She paused for a moment, then said softly, "Did you know? Ryan's hosting a big event on the exact same day." I sat up straight. "What did you say?" "A celebration for his new contract. He just signed on as the official head coach for the high school football team in Monroe County. They're holding the party on June 18th. At a major restaurant in Grand Rapids." I froze. A wave of emptiness swept through me. "You're sure it's the same day?" "I'm sure. And word is most of the relatives on your mom's side, even some from Ohio, have booked hotel rooms to attend. Your mom said she might not make it to your place in time." I thanked her and hung up, stunned. Ethan looked at me, concerned. "What's wrong?" I didn't answer right away. I picked up my phone and opened Facebook. Ryan's profile was still public. And just like Aunt Clara said, there was a brand new post showing Ryan standing next to the Monroe High School team signboard. Below the picture was a bold caption. "We're thrilled to invite friends and family to celebrate Ryan Parker becoming head coach of the Monroe Eagles. June 18th at 4 p.m. at the Oaks Banquet Hall. Food, dancing, and a new chapter." I couldn't breathe for a few seconds. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through the comments. My mom had written, "So proud of you, son. The whole family will be there. My dad replied with a fist emoji and, hotels booked. Can't wait for the big day. Not a single word about me. No mention of the wedding. Not even a simple sorry for the overlap. I stood up from the table and walked to the balcony with my phone. Ethan followed quietly, waiting. I called my mom and she picked up almost immediately. Maya? Is something wrong? I tried to keep my voice steady. I just saw the post about Ryan's party. There was a pause. Then my mom spoke like she'd rehearsed it. Yes, I meant to call you to talk about it. That party is on the same day as my wedding. Yes. But Ryan's been planning this for a while. You know, our youngest son. He just signed his first official contract. The whole extended family's excited to see him. I bit down hard, my lips trembling as I tried to hold it together. So that means no one's coming to my wedding? It's not that we won't come, my mom replied. Your father and I are thinking of attending the ceremony, then leaving early to make it back to Grand Rapids in time for Ryan's party. Or, if we can't, then after your honeymoon we'll all get together and have a small dinner. No one in the family asked how I'd feel about sharing my wedding day with Ryan's career party, Mom? Maya, you're being overly sensitive. This isn't a royal wedding. You know how Ryan is, he didn't do this on purpose. Not on purpose? I heard myself laugh. I announced the date 4 months ago. Everyone got the invitation. Everyone RSVP'd. Then Ryan schedules his party for the same day, doesn't say a word, and I'm the one being called sensitive? Mom went quiet. Then she said tiredly, You're an adult now, Maya. Not everything revolves around you. I went still. Those words were so familiar. All I could do was grip the balcony railing. I understand, I said, my voice strangely calm. If that's the choice you, Dad, and Ryan are making, then I'll make mine too. I hung up before she could say another word. Ethan was still nearby, eyes full of quiet hurt. They're not coming, are they? I nodded, my throat tight. Not because I was surprised, but because I had no more tears left. Ethan didn't say anything. He just stepped forward, wrapped his arms around me from behind, and let me rest against his chest. You don't need them to have a beautiful wedding, he whispered. I'm here. I'll always be here. That night, I sent a short message to my mom. I won't change the wedding date. I can't and won't do that just to step aside for a party celebrating Ryan's career. If you and Dad can't come, I will understand. But please don't expect me to treat that as normal. I never received a reply. Over the next few days, I got a few messages from extended relatives on my mom's side. Each one started with, so sorry we can't make the wedding, and ended with, but we'll definitely send a gift. Or, wishing you two the best. I read them, then deleted them. I didn't try to save face for the family. I didn't cover my hurt with polite smiles. I rewrote my wedding speech, taking out any mention of my parents or sacred family bonds. I wrote about choosing a different kind of family, about gratitude for those who truly showed up, and about a love that didn't require me to compete just to be seen. Inside, I began preparing myself. Not for a perfect wedding, but for an absence that had long become familiar, in the place that should have been the most complete moment of my life. I met Chloe Sanders in our sophomore year of college. We sat together in an evening academic writing class where most students were exhausted and irritable. But Chloe was different. She sat next to me, raised her hand without hesitation, and during the break offered me a granola bar with a soft smile like we'd already been friends. From that moment on, our friendship grew, through stressful exam seasons, roommate fights about who should cook dinner in our shared apartment. When I decided to move to Boston after graduation, she was the one who helped me pack boxes, wiped my tears, and said, I'm flying out to visit you soon, don't you dare forget me. Chloe never forgot about me. She was the first to know I was dating Ethan. She was the one who called the moment she saw the ring on Instagram and screamed over the phone, Oh my God, is this a dream come true? You just made me believe in love again, Maya. I didn't hesitate in choosing Chloe to be my bridesmaid. I trusted she'd be standing beside me. I even saved her a spot of honor right next to me in every photo. She'd witnessed nearly every chapter of my growing up. So when Chloe called on Wednesday night, just 5 days before the wedding, and told me she couldn't come, I thought I'd misheard. There's a family emergency, she said quickly. My grandma was rushed to the hospital and we all have to head back to Michigan. I'm really sorry, Maya. I know there's nothing I can say to ease your disappointment. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. Chloe, are you sure? I mean, if something's really going on, I understand. But you're my bridesmaid. You know that, right? I know. Of course I know, she said, her voice cracking. I feel awful. But I can't just leave her. My grandma's really weak. Once things settle down, I'll explain everything. I promise. I tried to stay calm. There was no reason to doubt Chloe. We'd been friends for nearly a decade. I told her I understood, wished her grandma a speedy recovery, and hung up. But something kept gnawing at me after that call. Not suspicion exactly, just a strange incompleteness. Like picking up something familiar, only to find it's lighter than usual, as if a piece of it was missing and you couldn't name what. The next morning, while waiting for the decorators to arrive and check the venue, I opened Instagram out of habit. Then my thumb froze on a new story that popped up. A former college friend had posted a selfie with Chloe. The picture clearly showed the main hall of the Oaks restaurant, the same venue I'd seen on Ryan's party invitation. Right next to Chloe was my mother, beaming, holding a champagne glass. And in the background, I could see Ryan on a small stage holding a microphone, dressed in a suit, looking like he was giving a speech to the crowd. Chloe was wearing that olive green dress I'd seen her pick out for my wedding. She was smiling, leaning into the camera, lips moving to the beat of a cheerful background song in the video clip. I clicked on Chloe's name. Her story had been set to hidden from me. But the app still left traces. Instagram clearly said, Chloe Sanders posted 4 stories today. I couldn't hear anything around me anymore. The sounds in the room thinned into nothing. I quietly stepped out into the hallway, shut the door, and stood there with the phone still in my hand, my mind spinning. I didn't know which hurt more, Chloe lying to me or her choosing to stand beside Ryan, on the very day I needed her the most. I sent one message. Chloe, your grandma's in the hospital in Grand Rapids? The message went through but never showed as seen. 1 hour passed. Then the whole afternoon and still no reply. Ethan found me in the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, pale as a sheet. He sat beside me, concern on his face. What's wrong, babe? I didn't say anything. I just handed him the phone. Ethan read the message, then the picture. When he looked up, his eyes were full of anger, but his voice stayed gentle. Chloe chose their side too. I nodded. Why? I whispered almost to myself. Why her? I can't take another hit like this. You don't need answers from people who don't deserve your questions, Ethan said, placing a hand on my back and gently stroking. Anyone who chooses to leave you when you need them most, they've removed themselves from your life. I didn't cry. I thought I would scream, smash something. But no. I just felt this hollow space inside me echoing back. Cold and empty. I erased Chloe's name from the seating chart. Took down the photo of us from the memory board near the entrance to the aisle. I rewrote my thank you notes in the guest book, taking her out of the list of those who stood by me through it all. That evening, Ethan's mom called. She asked if I needed any help with the final days before the wedding. I told her I'd just lost my bridesmaid. No details. No explanations. Just one quiet sentence. She paused for a few seconds, then gently said, "You won't be alone, Maya. Let the family handle everything." An hour later, Ethan's sister Olivia texted me, "Mom told me, if you'll allow me, I'd be honored to stand beside you at your wedding. No titles. I just want to be there if you need a hand." I stared at that message for a long while. Then I replied, "I do. Thank you." And I realized something. Sometimes family isn't where you were born, it's where people choose not to leave you. That morning I woke up before dawn, though I'd barely slept. Not because of nerves like most brides, but because my heart felt unbearably heavy. I lay still in bed, staring at the hotel ceiling, listening to the wind whisper through the trees outside the window. The first light of the wedding day crept through the sheer curtain, casting a gentle glow on the wedding dress hanging quietly in the corner of the room. There was no one else in the room. No chatting. No joyful giggles from friends. No mom brushing her daughter's hair in front of a big mirror like in those wedding movies I used to watch. Just me. And the silence that stung quietly. At 7 a.m. a soft knock came at the door. It was Olivia, Ethan's sister, carrying a breakfast tray and a cup of hot coffee. She smiled, her eyes warmer and more sincere than any congratulatory note I'd ever received. "I figured you haven't eaten." I shook my head, lips trembling. Well, then I'll sit here and you have to eat at least half this toast. It's the rule for self-appointed bridesmaids, Olivia said, her tone playful but calm. No pity, no fake optimism. Just steady presence. I looked at her, then chuckled, a small, genuine laugh. And in that moment I knew I wasn't truly alone. Around 10 o'clock the makeup artist arrived. Olivia stayed with me the whole time, helping pick out lipstick, adjusting the veil, buttoning every loop on the back of my dress with hands steadier than mine. You know, Olivia said as she pinned the floral piece in my hair, Ethan cried last night. I turned to her, startled. He didn't want you to see, so he went out to the balcony. Mom said he stood there for a long time. Then he came back in and said, "Why does Maya have to go through this?" and didn't say another word. I lowered my head. Tears began to pool in my eyes. Olivia was quiet, then gently placed a hand on my shoulder. You're not the unlucky one, Maya. Maybe there won't be family on your side of the aisle today, but every single person on the other side is here because they truly love you. I nodded, tears falling down my cheeks, but not out of pain. They were tears of gratitude and the aching relief of acceptance. By noon, I stepped into the chapel's waiting room. Everything was perfectly arranged. White lilies, soft candlelight, chairs draped in beige linen. Under the sun filtering through the tall stained glass windows behind the altar, the chapel glowed gently, holding in its silence the kind of faith I hadn't dared to believe in for a very long time. The door creaked open. It was Mr. Robert, Ethan's father. He stepped in, dressed in a crisp tuxedo, holding a white handkerchief. He stopped in front of me, his voice slightly trembling, but his eyes were sincere. Maya, if you'll allow me, it would be my honor to walk you down the aisle. I looked up at him, and in that moment I felt like a part of my heart, one that had been closed off for so long, had just been gently touched. I would be very grateful for that. He smiled, his eyes shining with the warmth of the father figure I had always longed for in my life. As the opening notes of the music played, the guests stood and the chapel doors opened. I stepped forward slowly, arm in arm with Mr. Robert. Every step carried anxiety, memories, and moments of self-doubt, wondering if I had ever been good enough for the people I loved. But I walked on. And I wasn't walking alone. I saw Ethan ahead, waiting for me with eyes filled with both fire and sky. His hands were clenched, like he was holding himself together from being overwhelmed. When our eyes met, everything around us faded. I no longer heard the music. All I could hear was my heartbeat. And a whisper from deep within, "I'm coming for you." The bride's side of the chapel sat empty. The first 3 chairs still had name cards. Mr. and Mrs. Parker, Ryan Parker. None of them showed up. A soft breeze passed through, making the tiny name cards flutter slightly. I glanced at them briefly, then looked away. I wouldn't let that steal my moment. The ceremony felt like a bittersweet dream. We stood beneath the soft glow of candlelight, surrounded by Ethan's friends and family. The minister offered his blessing, and Ethan squeezed my hand so gently I nearly broke into tears. "I promise I'll never let you walk alone again, Maya," he said in his vow, his voice raspy with emotion. "From this day forward, you don't have to fight alone or prove anything anymore. You have always been enough. You are enough. Always." I looked at him through tears. I don't remember every word I said in my vow, only that when I ended with, "And I choose you, I choose this love," even when the people I once loved chose not to show up, everyone stood and applauded, not out of ritual but from genuine feeling. After the ceremony, Ethan and I walked out to the garden behind the chapel to take photos. As we sat on a stone bench together, I looked up at the vast summer sky, feeling light, but not empty. Ethan held my hand tightly. "I know you dreamed of a different day. A different wedding." I shook my head. "No. I never dreamed of who would be there. I just used to dream that I wouldn't be the only one trying to hold everything together. And today you don't have to do that alone anymore." I turned to him. "I know. And I'm not ashamed of the empty chairs anymore." We sat like that for a long while. In the distance, laughter floated from the reception, the clinking of silverware against glasses, soft music rising from the speakers. Then I stood and tugged his hand. "Let's go. We still have a whole night to live fully, for those who truly chose to stand by us." As Ethan and I stood side by side, hands clasped, cutting into the smooth white wedding cake adorned with lavender blooms, The reception hall erupted with applause. Everyone gathered close, laughter mingling with the gentle music, and for a moment it felt like every scar on my heart was being slowly soothed by that warm candlelit glow. But just as the knife touched the first layer of frosting, my phone began vibrating in my purse. I ignored it. Once, twice, 3 times. The buzzing wouldn't stop, like someone was clinging to each beat of my breath. I glanced at Ethan. He raised a concerned brow. "Everything okay?" I smiled faintly. Probably someone forgot the schedule. Then Olivia came over looking concerned. She leaned in and whispered, "Maya, your phone's been buzzing nonstop." I saw who's calling. "It's your mom." I froze, my hand slipping away from the cake knife. My heart pounded. For weeks she hadn't said a word. No response, no message. And now, just as I'd become a wife, she was calling? I rushed toward the lounge room off the side of the reception hall and pulled out my phone. Dozens of missed calls from Mom and a few messages, short, urgent. "Maya, please answer." And one final line that made my whole body go cold. "I was wrong. It's not what you think." My fingers trembled as I hit redial. The phone rang just once before she picked up. Her voice came through instantly, choked and broken. "Maya, can you forgive me?" I went still. How many years had it been since I last heard my mother say my name through tears? "Mom, what's going on?" Her voice was hoarse, hurried, like if she paused for even a second, she'd lose the courage to continue. "It was Ryan, he lied. He told your father and me that you didn't want anyone at the wedding. He showed us texts, emails, saying you wanted a quiet ceremony without family interference. I believed him, we believed him." I collapsed into a small chair in the lounge, phone pressed to my ear, feeling like all the strength had drained out of my body. "He forged your messages. Blocked the real invitation. He told everyone you wanted to go solo, be independent." I was angry, but then Ryan showed us the messages. Such harsh words. I didn't know it was all made up. "I never wrote those words," I said, my voice cracking. "I asked again and again if you were coming. I sent the invitation. I texted. You even said, 'We'll see, the schedule's tight.'" I know now. Ryan just confessed to your father. He cried, said he felt hurt because everyone kept praising you, your achievements, your independence. He was afraid of being left behind. He said he'd been coddled all his life, never learned how to handle not being the favorite. And when you began to shine, he felt invisible. I never expected. I closed my eyes. Old memories rushed in like waves breaking a dam. Mom stroking Ryan's hair when he threw tantrums, Dad saying, "Maya, you're older, let him have it. The best gifts always going to Ryan," while I quietly swallowed my tears and kept moving forward. I thought I'd left it all behind. But the wounds had never really healed. "Maya." Mom's voice softened to a whisper. I was wrong to believe him. But could you give me a chance to make it right? I sat in silence, my breath hanging somewhere between grief and disbelief. "What do you want?" I asked, not bothering to hide the exhaustion in my voice. "I just want you to know. I miss you. And I regret it." I looked out the window. The warm yellow lights from the wedding reception reflected off the glass. These were people not bound to me by blood, but who had chosen to stand by me, to support me unconditionally. And then I thought of the look in Ethan's eyes when he promised he wouldn't let me walk alone. Somehow my heart felt lighter. "Mom," I said softly, "I'm not hanging up, but I need time. Because today is my wedding day, and I want to live it fully." There was a long silence on the other end before my mother finally whispered, "All right. When you're ready, I'll be here." I ended the call. No tears. No anger. Just a quiet moment in my mind, like I had finally set down a bag of rocks I'd carried far too long. I stepped back into the reception hall. Ethan was looking for me, his eyes filled with concern. The moment he saw me, he came straight over and took my hand. "You okay?" I nodded. "I'll tell you later. But right now, I want to dance." The music had just shifted to a soft jazz tune. Ethan smiled, didn't press, and pulled me into his arms under the twinkling lights, his embrace as steady as a fortress. In that moment I understood. Some apologies come too late to turn back time, but it's never too late to start again. If someone is truly sincere. And if your heart is still open enough to hear it. I rested my head on Ethan's shoulder, letting all the noise fade away, until all that remained was the music, the rhythm of a heartbeat, and a whisper inside me. I survived. And I deserved to be happy. I returned to the hotel close to midnight, my makeup smudged after a long day, but the lobby lights were still on, quietly waiting for something left unsaid. I walked toward the elevator, hollow inside. Just as I was about to go up, the receptionist called me over and handed me a small note. "Someone left a message for you. They're in the meeting room on the 3rd floor." I knew who it was. I didn't need to see the handwriting. My heart clenched, my fingers gripping the edge of the simple white dress Olivia had picked out for the evening. I had changed out of my wedding gown earlier. My hair was loose now and the perfume had nearly faded. I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. A woman who was no longer the little girl sitting silently on the steps after her brother took her birthday cake. But the heart in her chest still carried old scars. I knocked on the meeting room door. It opened slightly. Inside, my father sat with his head bowed and my mother stood beside the table, her hands clasped tightly. The overhead light cast a glow that made their faces look more worn than I had ever seen. The air was thick, like a song stuck on one long low note that wouldn't end. I stood tall, voice calm. "You wanted to talk?" My mother nodded and stepped closer, then stopped a few steps away as if still unsure if she was allowed to approach. "Hiya," she began, her voice cracking like a glass splitting. "Would you sit?" "I'd rather stand," I replied, not taking my eyes off them. "I'm not sure I can stay calm sitting that close." My father lifted his head. He looked older than the last time I saw him. But those eyes, they were the same ones that stayed silent when Ryan pushed me off my bike when I was 8, then said, "Don't cry. You're the older one. You have to be strong." "Hiya," he said slowly. "I'm sorry." Just those 3 words. But they made the room pause for a beat. "For today?" I asked, my voice oddly steady. "Or for everything that started a long time ago?" My mother sank into a chair, covering her face. "We let guilt lead us. We know you were always the one who got the short end. You were kind, independent, and we thought giving Ryan more attention wouldn't hurt. But over time, we couldn't even face you anymore because we didn't know how to fix what we'd broken." I gave a small, dry laugh. "So you believed the worst about me, thought I didn't want any family at my wedding, because your guilt was too heavy?" "No, that's not it," my mother shook her head repeatedly. "When Ryan showed me those messages, those edited emails, I thought, maybe you were just mad and acted out. I wanted to call you, but I was afraid you'd push me away. Afraid you hated me, so I stayed silent. And that silence," I whispered, "was the same as it's always been. Every time I hurt or tried or hoped, silence was all I got back." My father rose and stepped closer. "I won't make excuses. But I have to be honest, I was ashamed to face you. You did everything I never imagined possible. I didn't believe one person, on her own with no support, could build a life like that. When Ryan started talking about you with bitterness, I should have questioned it. But I didn't." I looked him in the eye. "I never needed you to believe how successful I was. I just needed you to stop assuming I was cold, selfish, or calculating." He stopped in his tracks. "I understand now. Did Ryan tell you why he did it?" asked, my voice dry. My mother answered, "He cried a lot. He said every time someone mentioned you, he felt abandoned even though he was always the one who got everything. He didn't know why he couldn't shake the feeling. He was jealous that people started to admire you. He panicked when you succeeded. He was afraid you'd outshine him." I closed my eyes. Ryan needs therapy. More than forgiveness. But that's no longer my responsibility. My father nodded. "We've already told him. Starting next week, he'll be meeting with a specialist. And your mom and I, we need to talk to someone too. We need to relearn how to be parents." There was a pause. Then my mother asked hesitantly, "Could you give us a chance?" "Not today. But someday. When you're ready." I didn't answer right away. I looked at the 2 people who had once been my whole world and who had also made me feel like a shadow in my own home. They were sitting there now with no power, no authority, just 2 people carrying a late, heavy remorse. "I don't know how much I can forgive," I said quietly. "But I do know one thing, I've stopped hoping. And that's what finally made me free." My mother cried. She stood, slowly came closer and stopped right in front of me. "If one day, you ever need me beside you, even just for a little while, I'll be there. I didn't respond. I just gave a small nod and walked out of the room. Out in the hallway, the night breeze slipped through the cracks of the window, making the curtains sway. I didn't feel light, but I saw myself clearly. A few months after the wedding, life gradually fell into a new rhythm. But it wasn't a neat, perfect circle. It was a winding journey full of bumps, recovery, redefining trust, and rebuilding. I started family therapy sessions with my parents. At first, we met individually. Then gradually, we sat in the same room, a neutral space with soft lighting and a middle-aged woman named Margaret guiding us. "What makes you feel safe sitting here?" Margaret asked me in our first session with all three of us. I was quiet for a moment, then answered, "When I can be heard without being judged." My mother held back tears and nodded. My father looked me in the eye and for the first time, didn't interrupt or explain. He simply said, "I'm learning. Not fast, but I'm trying." It wasn't easy. There were days I left therapy with a heavy heart, my face streaked with tears and old memories aching deep inside. But I didn't quit. Not because I wanted to forgive right away, but because I wanted to set new boundaries. Clear and fair ones. I spoke plainly to my parents during our fourth therapy session. "I don't want to hear any more apologies. I want to see action. If you truly want to be part of my life, of the new family I'm building, then you have to walk in with real steps, not guilt or rehearsed lines shaped by regret." My mother's eyes welled up. "Then what do you need me to do?" I answered without hesitation, "Start by not comparing and stop defending Ryan. And if you make a mistake, name it. Don't sugarcoat it. Otherwise, keep your distance. I can't open the door to a home when the person standing outside is still dragging the old baggage of hurt and denial." As for Ryan, once everything came to light, he was forced to resign from the sports training center due to pressure from parents and management. Many people didn't believe what he had done was real, because Ryan had always maintained the image of someone upbeat and funny. But I didn't care anymore. I didn't need the world to know or validate what he had done. I only needed him to lose the power to control or manipulate the relationships in my life. At the request of my parents and with legal guidance from the family attorney, Ryan officially entered a long-term psychological treatment program, set to last at least 6 months. I didn't visit. I didn't send messages. But I kept tabs from a distance, not out of concern but because I needed to make sure this was a real path to healing, not just another image repair tactic like before. During that time, I found a quiet peace with Ethan and his family. My mother-in-law, Deborah, began inviting me to small Sunday family gatherings. She often made slow-cooked stew with vegetables from the backyard garden, seasoning while telling stories from her youth as a nursing student. My father-in-law, Carl, would sometimes tuck folded business articles into my hand, ones he thought I might enjoy. One time while I was making tea in the kitchen, Deborah came and stood beside me. She whispered, "No matter what happens out there, this place will always be your home." I turned to her, my gaze softening. "I know," I whispered. "Thank you for never asking why I cry. You just stay." Carl once found me sitting alone on the balcony as the sunset spilled across the porch. "I know you didn't grow up with the kind of family Ethan has," he said, his hand resting gently on my shoulder, warm like the hug of a father I hadn't had in years. "But you still chose to be good even when no one made you. That makes you stronger than anyone I've ever met." I used to think I would never feel a sense of family again. But sometimes it comes from people who don't share your blood. Ethan didn't speak much but always knew when I needed a tight embrace or a quiet evening just sitting together, listening to soft jazz. He never asked me to cheer up or let go of the past. He simply said, "We've got time. As much as you need. No rush." And then one early autumn morning, I held a pregnancy test in my hand, 2 red lines. My hands trembled. Not out of fear but because something stirred deep inside me, a promise. I sat down on the edge of the bed, placed my hand on my stomach. Behind the thin silk of my nightgown, a tiny life was forming. I closed my eyes, tears falling as warmth spread through my chest. I whispered, just loud enough for the baby to hear in my heart, "I promise I'll always be here. No matter what you do, no matter who you become, you'll never be abandoned like I once was." Outside on the porch, the wind gently stirred the white curtains. Morning sunlight streamed through the window, brushing my cheek. And in that moment I knew, what I had lost no longer mattered more than what I was about to protect. Family isn't the place you're born into. It's the one you choose to begin again, with courage, with compassion, and with a promise to never repeat the wounds of the past. My story may stir anger, sympathy, or even doubt in some people. How can you forgive those who turned their backs during the most important moment of your life? How do you open your heart again after being suffocated by the very people who called themselves family? But to me, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to hold on to the light within you so you're no longer imprisoned by someone else's darkness. It means setting boundaries, moving forward, and building a place for yourself and the next generation, where love isn't conditional on success, status, or guilt. If you've listened this far, I want to ask you, who is truly your family? Have you ever felt misunderstood, cast aside by the very crowd that was supposed to feel most familiar? And if you have, what did you do to reclaim your own voice? I hope you'll share your thoughts in the comments below. Every story, every perspective is a beam of light to help each other navigate uncertain days. If my story resonated with something in you, please follow this channel so you won't miss the next stories. Raw reflections about family, about loss, and about the journey to reclaim your worth from what once felt broken. Thank you for listening all the way to this point. We'll meet again, in real human stories that feel just like yours and mine.